We are back now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk a little bit more about the games that we didn't get to in yesterday's show regarding Week 8. And one of them that I had to bring up was the Eagles winning their third game in a row and going to 5-2. In their second consecutive road game, the Eagles also got a win. Now they go to 5-2 after a 37-17 win over the Cincinnati Bengals, who unfortunately for them, their lackluster season would be the best way I could put it, continues, just because the expectations for this Bengals team, and it always feels like they're close. They are what the record says they are, in the sense that not necessarily that they're the same level of every 3-5 team, but the Bengals, in the case of being 3-5 and reflecting who they are as a team, it's right there. You feel like it's close, right? 3-5 by no means is completely done, but you always feel like you're getting close. You get close to 500 right in this game where you were 3-4 going in, and then you find yourself at a loss. There's always something that pops up that disappoints you, that doesn't come through, and that's where you are with the Bengals, right? You feel like it's almost there, you have all the pieces, but then there's something else. And then the next week you look great, you get another win, you're back to being close to finally maybe seeing a breakthrough, and unfortunately, this other thing, fails you or something like that. So that's what I'm feeling right now with the Bengals. It feels like it's hard to understand how they have the pieces and everything, but just certain things go wrong. Maybe they start off the game very well, like they did in this one, but then it just dies off, and you don't really know exactly what to pinpoint it on, right? People have mentioned the defense. People have mentioned maybe the running game after the loss of Joe Mixon, the offensive line not being great to begin with, but losing one of their offensive tackles for the rest of the year is another thing. So there are certain things, but you still feel like the Bengals should be putting up more of a fight than this. But really, the Eagles also, I think, for as many reasons as we can think of for the Bengals, the Eagles also now have been impressing a little bit more, at least have been impressing me. Philadelphia now are on a 3-game win streak with this victory. They're still about a half a game back of Washington for first place in the NFC East. So with those games coming up, I'm sure they play the Commanders soon in one of these games. If I just check real quick, they play the Commanders not this week or the following week, but after that on November 14th. That'll be their first game against them. So they got to keep this pace, trying to keep up with the Commanders that have obviously been the story of the entire season. Jaden Daniels has taken over everything, but the Eagles, don't forget about them. They're still right there, and I think this game is inching me closer to believing that this team is sort of getting there, and I truly believe that because in this game, it took a half before really Philadelphia kind of kicked it into gear, whereas with Cincinnati in this game, they began very well, but then they also just kind of flattened out and couldn't score anymore after a certain time. So with this game, like we've been talking about, it was a good performance, again, I have to mention, by Jalen Hurts, because in this game, he had 236 yards, only one throwing touchdown, but accounted for 3 rushing touchdowns. So 4 touchdowns on the day for Jalen Hurts, and now if you look at his last run of games, this 3-game win streak, he played very well against the Browns. He had 264 passing yards, 2 touchdowns in that one, and no rushing numbers really. Against the Giants, he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and he had 114 passing yards and another throwing touchdown. And in this game in Cincinnati, 4 touchdown game for Hurts. So, yeah, you might be looking at the teams, right, and thinking, oh, like, big deal, it's the Giants, or it's the Browns, or maybe even the Bengals aren't that good. But I think it's something. I think it's significant for Jalen Hurts to build this run of games, because before, when there was that whole negative cloud around the Eagles, especially after they lost to the Buccaneers, then they went into their bye week, and they were just trying to figure everything out. So coming off of that bye week and having a good game against the Browns, albeit still a very close game, then they blow out the Giants, and then they pretty much blow out the Bengals there in the last parts of the game. So it is something to start building here, I think, for the Eagles, that can excite some fans, I'm sure, because their team is, stacking wins now. They're not just getting a win here, bad performance here. I think this is a good sign for the Eagles, whereas with the Bengals, not awful numbers. Joe Burrow, 234 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. The running game, I guess you would say, disappointed in this game. They only had 58 total rushing yards. Chase Brown led all running backs with 32 yards and that touchdown. Mike Gesicki, 7 receptions, 73 yards for National Tight End Day. And Jamar Chase got on the score sheet by scoring the only touchdown for or one of the touchdowns for the Bengals. He had 54 yards, 9 receptions, so not a crazy game, but not too bad either as well. But yeah, looking how this game played out and kind of how odd it was a little bit, just because you look at the way that the game started with Cincinnati scoring on their first drive, 17 play, 70-yard drive for the Bengals. You know, it's hard to, in Philadelphia also, or actually no, excuse me, in Cincinnati, it's hard to start any better than that, right? A dominating drive to kick off the game at home. It definitely got the juices flowing there in Cincinnati, and you know, by the reaction of everything, it felt like, you know, the Bengals could take this game. I don't know if they were the favorites or underdogs heading into this game, but still a major game for both of these two teams. Then, after a couple field goals followed that, the score was 10-3 in favor of Cincinnati, but Cincinnati, right after that, they missed their next field goal, and of course, like it usually does happen, you miss an opportunity and the team scores right after that, and that's exactly what the Eagles did. They scored a touchdown right after that missed field goal to tie it at 10-10 going into halftime. So now the game gets a little bit shorter now, right? You finish the half deadlocked, so now with all the changes, with all the adjustments that both coaches have made, you start a new game per se, and it looked like the Eagles came out a lot more energized, a lot more disciplined in their execution, because after halftime, obviously, we had 3 straight touchdown drives, 2 by Philadelphia and 1 by Cincinnati. So now the score, when it was 10-10 at halftime, the Eagles jumped out to a lead, actually, 24-17, but still, by no means was the game done, obviously, but the game really changed and really got away from the Bengals, I believe, was when they didn't convert on that 4th down to end the third quarter. And that felt like a big momentum shift. It felt like a demoralizing play where it was a moment where, you know, the Bengals, you know, they just gave up 3, or they gave up just 2 touchdowns to the Eagles, and where they only had 1, and then they punted away another drive that they have. But at that point, you're trying to keep pace, and you don't convert on a play that, right from the start, it looked like Cooper DeJean, the second-round rookie for the Eagles, read it pretty well, so credit to him. But also, it just never looked like it was going to develop into something. You know, you want to get Jamar the ball, obviously, in those big moments, but it was pretty evident that the Eagles knew what was coming. They knew it was going to Jamar, and Cooper DeJean made a great play, and they stopped him. They stopped him on that drive, and then right after that, Philadelphia goes on to get 2 more field goals and a touchdown. The touchdown drive was a 12-play, 85-yard drive, and after those 2 field goals as well, it just ballooned to 17-37, obviously, the final score. And I didn't mention also that touchdown that the Eagles scored killed about 8 minutes off of the game clock in the 4th quarter. So you have the Bengals missing an opportunity to potentially tie the game or to continue their drive to try and tie the game, right? But you don't get it, you fail that conversion, and the Eagles kill the rest of the time, and on top of that, they score a touchdown and those 2 other field goals as well. So it wasn't until after, you know, that 4th down conversion, you know, it became 37-17, right? But from that point on, you know, the Bengals offense just really just died off from there. After the turnover on downs, the Bengals threw an interception, a pretty miraculous one, right? It's not like just like Joe threw a bad ball or anything like that. It was just a good play by the Eagles secondary, and they also lost a fumble. Mike Gesicki lost a fumble. So the game was pretty much wrapped up at that point, and this win is obviously more impressive, I believe, for the Philadelphia Eagles, because Cincinnati has a good offense with a great quarterback and great wide receivers. So I think for the Eagles defense to finally face an offense like that, you know, we just talked about the Browns. They really struggled with Deshaun. You had the Giants also really struggling. You know, they only scored 3 points. This was a good, you know, level up kind of test for the Eagles defense to face Jamar Chase, to face Joe Burrow, and just the Cincinnati offense that has been putting up points. But on this day, the Eagles defense stepped up and they played very good coverage there towards the end, forcing these turnovers and just forcing tighter throws that, with obviously the Bengals chasing the game and everything like that, were resulting in turnovers or just were resulting in becoming easier for the Philadelphia Eagles defense to kind of read it. So, their defense, the Eagles defense, generated a good amount of pressure, some big turnovers, obviously to complement their offense, dominating and demoralizing also with those long drives. So I think Philly is entering into their best form so far, and that's one of the best things you can have for a football team to kind of start rolling into your groove now in week 10, week 9, week 11. Once you start rolling into that groove and feeling good, you have the big divisional games coming up. You have the end of the season, right, where everybody's jockeying for standings, for seedings, right? If you're just entering your best form there, that's exactly what this Eagles team needs, as opposed to last year, obviously, right, where they hit their worst part of the season at around this time of year. So to kind of have it flip or look like it's flipping a little bit from last year, that's a great sign. Obviously, Saquon is doing his thing. I think Jalen is playing cleaner football now, being a bit more responsible with the ball. And their defense is getting people off the field. Jalen Carter's making an impact. Those edge rushers now are starting to, turn the corner figuratively and literally, helping this defense. And they're making plays on the back end as well. So it's encouraging, certainly. Can they win this division? It's right there. It's not like the Commanders are 2 or 3 games ahead. They're right there basically with the same record. So, the Eagles, if things start going or continue to go like I'm sort of predicting, why couldn't they win the division, right? The Commanders are young. There's their first season kind of figuring everything out. The Eagles have been here. They've won the division before, and they have all the talent in the world to do so. So I think this is a good sign here for Eagles fans to kind of start getting excited about this because they have a good team. The issue has always been the coaching or the distractions or the relationships off of the field. And it looks like they've kind of put all those things to bed. And now they're just left with a very good and talented team. So they're only going to continue to get better, which is also another great sign. So it starts with the win that they had and in a pretty good game for them as well. So that was the Eagles. So from one bird team, we're going to go to another bird team in the Arizona Cardinals, getting their own big win over the Miami Dolphins in Miami, spoiling Tua's return. We're going to go into that. A very close game. One that maybe not a lot of people tuned into, but they missed certainly a great game by the Cardinals and just overall, just for entertainment purposes. So we're going to talk about that and discuss how good this Arizona team really is, and also are the Miami Dolphins done officially for 2024. So we'll be right back with those two questions after this break.